So our next speaker is Mehedi Hasan from Bangladesh. So he will be, yeah, yeah. So Mehedi Hasan is the CTO of EBS Group, and he have a good experience in telecom projects. He's one of the organizer for Tech Forum Dhaka, and he's also a well-known speaker in local and international communities. So yeah, over to you, Mehdi.
Hello and welcome to my session. This is Mohammad Abdullah Mehdi Hasan from Bangladesh. I'm working as a Chief Technology Officer in EBS Group, a Dhaka-based software company. It's a really it's a really privilege to get opportunity to speak in front of you. It's really an honor for me. Today my session is on getting started with SQL ML services with Python. Let's proceed. Okay. Today I'm going to cover what is ML services, why ML service is required, how it works, its benefits, history, installation. Then we'll run a sample, small sample. Then we'll check back the internal architecture. We'll develop a model, deploy it, consume it, monitoring, security. And at last we'll have some question and answer session. Uh, if you miss previous past session, you can collect it from paststuff.com. And obviously we are talking in this session because of our global sponsor and supporters, Microsoft Azure, Dell, Google Cloud, Idera, Quest, Centurion, and VMware. And this event is sponsored by Microsoft. Okay. First thing first. Before starting, I would like to ask some question basically. So do you know, are you aware of ML services? Do you know what is ML services? Or do you have any previous experience on ML services, how it works? Or do you created any model with R or Python? Or did you consume? Well, if you do, or if you don't, then if you do, then we'll share our experience together. And if you not, then you can start from here basically. So let's go to our next slide. Okay. Before starting, we all know about machine learning. Machine learning is basically a hot topic in this world, but let's define it as per wiki. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence in the field of computer science that uses the statistical techniques to give the computers the ability to learn. Here, learning means the ability to progressively improve its performance on a specific task. And definitely it does based on the data, not by the explicitly programmed. This means that machine learning uses the different statistical technique and tools and techniques and models, and based on the data we can do the prediction, and there is no required some explicit program for it. Okay, why machine learning basically? Machine learning, well, there are some problems basically, which is very much unique. And if you use our traditional programming language, like programming method, then we can't resolve it. For example, identifying objects in people or photos and videos, that is facial recognition. Without the machine learning, it is quite challenging. Then recommendation, whenever we search in Google or buy some products from Amazon or watch movies in Netflix or YouTube, they all are using that recommendation system. So recommendation system is another example of machine learning. Then sentiment analysis. Sentiment analysis is we are all using the social media, for example, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and many more. So all are these in this all. So it's very important that what people or what audience is thinking about our products or our services. So what they are is speaking, what's going on in the social media about ourselves. So uh, for that part, sentiment analysis is very much required. And lastly, the autonomous vehicle that are self-driving cars. So self-driving car is not a new concept right now. So it's already running in some countries like US, and so self-driving car is also an example of machine learning. So now we'll explore what is SQL ML services. Well, SQL ML services is the feature of a SQL Server that gives the ability to run external scripts write a Python or R with the relational data. So it uses the leverage of open source package and frameworks along with the Microsoft's proprietary packages like Reverse, Revolution, Microsoft ML for predictive analysis of machine learning. And everything happens within the database, database, that is within the SQL Server environment. We'll explore this in the next slides. So how it works basically, we all know data stores in data tables. So all data are usually stored in the data tables, and this data is used for training a model and uh, for training and evaluation of models. Then these models are stored in the database. That is, we serialize the statistical models and save it in the database. And whenever an application calls for any prediction or scoring value, then it calls the start procedure, which loads the model from the data table, do some prediction, and returns that value back to the application. And again, application might store that data in the data tables, and which again which this new data is again used for training purpose for improvement models performance. And this is an basically cycle. So what can we do using the SQL ML services? From the SQL ML services, we can use for classification, regression, anomaly detection, recommendation. For classification, simply based on the input data, we can classify the input data and put them in some categories like which group it might belong. Some well-known classification models are text classification, image face recognition or image recognition, sentiment analysis. And regression is used for prediction or forecasting of future data. For example, based on the previous sales report, we can do some modeling for forecasting our future sales or weather model. All can be done. All are done using the regression model. And then the anomaly detection. Anomaly detection is selecting the outlier or determine the detecting the fault in the in the input data. So for the anomaly detection, what happens is that we just find out the outlier in the input data, and we do some other based on some other criteria, we just find out the fault. And finally, recommendation. Often, recommendation is very much popular whenever we do any searching in Google, Facebook, or YouTube. They all are recommend something. Recommendation is something we can say that it is an offer relevant suggestion to users. So, which if I watch a particular video in YouTube, then it recommends something relevant to this video so that I can watch more. Uh, Now the ML services, basically the ML, what ML service means to the developers, DBA, analyst, or scientist. I mean that as a developer, database developer, or DBA, or analyst, or data scientist, why should care about SQL ML services? Well, for the first thing, for the database developers are already familiar with data, tabular data. They know the SQL query and SQL query. But the present world is more demanding. They want, apart from the physical tabular data, they want some intelligence from that data. So if a database developers know the Python and R and do and familiar with some predictive analysis, and they can get some they can generate some intelligence from this data, which will give some added advantage in his career. So for the DBA is already governing the database. If they, it's not required that they should know the Python or R language. It's an optional knowledge for them. But what they should know that how to monitor or govern the resources which are used by the Python or R, and sometimes they need to monitor the fine tuning the performance and allocate the resources properly so that the machine learning the external scripts run smoothly and get the proper resources.
Wait, just a minute, because I think your screen is only two screens are showing. So maybe you can,
Oh,
yeah,
oh, okay, okay, okay.
yes, maybe your slideshow.
Okay.
Yeah, I think is
Can
now.
you see?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. So benefits. So SQL Server has many benefits. Before starting the benefits, first benefit is the data movement. First take how typical data science process are happening right now. Whenever a data professional requires any data, he requests the data to the DevOps or database developers, and they do some ETL, they fetch the data from different database sources, do some ETL, and back to the data professionals. And then data professionals do some analysis uh, and uh, develop the models train it. And again, if they require the new data for testing the performance of the model, and they request for the DevOps, and again and this can loop basically. And once the model is ready, they again hand it over to the DevOps so that they can deploy it in the database server. So in this case, we can see that the data is from the database, it goes to the data professionals and goes to the beyond the database environment, which is an basically security concern. So in ML service, SQL ML services, it removes the data movement. So what happens that since database, if database professionals get the access in the SQL server, they do the models or experiments. They train up the models, improve the performance. So all are happening in the within the SQL server environment. So there is no need to move the data. And everything we are talking about, the external scripts, R scripts, are all the data modeling from train up. Everything is doing inside the SQL Server environment. So we can control SQL Server environment from the DBA can control all these. And now we all know that the open source world is very much vibrant. There are lots of happening in the Python and machine learning world. So we can use that that in mail and use it along with the SQL Server for getting some more intelligence, again, getting some intelligence from the SQL Server. For example, we can use the PyTorch, TensorFlow, Scikit-learn, etc., and get some additional intelligence from our data stored in the SQL Server. Well, we are going to a brief history basically. So you can say that in 2015, Microsoft acquires the Revolution Analytics, analytical company, and renamed it Art Server to ML Server. And 2016, Microsoft launched the ML services for SQL Server. And 2017, Python was added in ML services. So, and 2019, SQL Server uses the extensibility framework, and also the Azure SQL Server ML services for R. Okay, now we'll go for the installation. For the installation, is pretty straightforward for installation process. So you just get the media from the SQL of the SQL Server and run the setup as administrator on local machine, and we start the setup wizard, do some installation from the installation tab, select the standalone installation, or you can add the for the existing installation, you can add the features. And but we need to be careful that we don't install the image service on a domain controller, don't install the shared features, and it's a wise decision not to install the Python or R as side by side. And for the remaining part, give your consent for R and Python. So what is important is that we should refrain from installing ML services on domain controller, not to install the shared features, and not to install any other Python or R version in the server. And then we will need to configure the SQL Server so that we can run the external script. So external script is very much important with the external script is solely used to run the external scripts. So now we can restart the database engine, and we can have the run our ML services in SQL Server. So now we'll have a small demo. Let me share my script. Can you see? Can you share what's my screen?
No, I can see your slides. Yeah.
What's my slides?
Yeah.
Okay, just give me a moment. Can you share my see my screen now? Yes. Okay. This is my VM where I have installed the SQL Server and ML services. So if we run this code, this is basically for allowing the external script permission. So I have already enabled my permission. So it's showing the config value is 1 and run value is 1. So now I'll just run this demo. It will take a couple of seconds to complete. And this is basically print the hello Mehedi. Yes, so we can say that our installation is successful. So I am going back to my presentation. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yeah, we can see your notes slide.
Okay. So we'll now check the internal architecture of SQL ML services and how it works basically. There are some major SQL ML services uses the extensibility framework architecture. For there are some major components which are SQL Server processes, Launchpad process, extension process, and the Excel Server process. So SQL Server process is the SQL Server process is the main process which do all the SQL Server processes. And whenever a request comes to the SQL Server, it launches the appropriate it's called the Launchpad process. Launchpad process is responsible for running or starting the external script, for example, R or Python. So if it's an R script is coming, then it launches the RDLL, or if it's an Python, then it launches the appropriate Python launcher. And after that, extension process, the extension process communicate with the BXL server. BXL server ensures that the scripts runs within a separate container, and it communicates with the SQL server for exchanging any data, and which might be requested from the external scripts, and also check and monitor the process external scripts. And once the execution is done, it informs also the SQL Server using the SQL satellite, and finally once results comes to the SQL Server, then the SQL Server closes all the connections. So here is the communication flow basically. So once any external script request is comes, the Launchpad SQL Server request for the Launchpad. If it's an Python script, then Launchpad launches the Python launcher, and the Python launcher communicate with the python.exe process and run the Python exe. Right now, the Python 3.5 is supporting SQL Server, so it also load the Python 3.5 DLL, and Microsoft Visual SQL is also loaded if required, and everything is BXL server. BXL is stand for binary exchange server. So and BXL server load the SQL reader, writer, and converter. So it basically it encapsulates the Python external script, that is Python code in container, and also if there is any data is required in the script SQL tabular data. For example, if the script selects any data from the SQL server, then the Excel server also fetch the data through the SQL satellite, and the Excel server also monitor this script. And once the execution is done, the SQL server closes the communication. So here there are some several protocols. SQL Server use several protocols for such communication. TCP/IP is a common protocol. This is whenever the SQL Server and satellite. If I go back in my previous slide, that is this communication. The SQL Server and the satellite is based on the TCP/IP. And there are some VXL server and SQL Server uses proprietary protocol name type, which is for exchanging data. Remember that I told that if any moments the external script needs any data from the SQL Server, name type is used for providing this data. And ODBC for used for Python for Python language, and it can be if we request connect the email services from remote machine, and then ODBC is required. For the R language, RODBC is used, and XDF is a proprietary file format, and it is used the transfer of blocks of data between SQL Server and external script. So running the Python script. So for the Python script, SP execute external script. This is a very much crucial script, and it is used for the external script. External execution of external script, for example, R or Python. So whenever we run any script, basically this SP is used, and it takes several parameters. For example, language. Language is the defines the language of the extension. For example, whether it's in Python or R, and the script parameter takes the whole script embedded in the single code. And if we want to give any data as input, the input data one is used, and with the result sets, we can define the if the script returns any data result sets, this script is used. Okay, now we'll develop and the model basically. It's for predicting the ski rentals, and this is a regression model. If you remember, I already talked about regression model. Regression model is a statistical technique which use the previous data as an input, and based on this data, we can predict or we can forecast any future value. That means the input data is an independent variable, and based on this input data, our prediction is made. So what we'll do that we'll do some sample data. We already have some sample data. I'll show you. Then develop and train up the model and save this model, save or deploy this model to database. We'll do some predictions, save these predictions, and we'll also verify verify and check our predictions and how much is accurate. And we can this can be used in our application. And again, you know that SQL Server email services and repeated process. So every time we every time we need to train up the model and do the what I mean that every time we use the data from the data source, train up the model, do some do the evaluation of the model, and again we set the set the model and update the model. So it's demo time. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So first of all, we'll have some sample data. So I already have some sample data. It's in my tutorial DB. Let me show you the data. So here there's an yearly data, basically month, month of the year, month of the year, the day, and how many rental was done. What is the day of the week? Is it an holiday? What is the whether it is the snow? It's a public holiday, etc. Is there. So we have data for for the year 2013, 14, and 15. So this is our sample data, and sorry, and based on this sample data, we'll do the modeling. So first we'll create an table. This will used for storing our model basically. So if you remember that, we'll for this demo, we'll develop a model, and then we'll store it in the database. So before saving this model, we just create a database table to store the model. Now we will develop the model basically. So if you see that, let me explain a little bit. We are going to create an SP. It's called generate rental pie model. It will take an parameter trained model, and data type is binary. And within this start procedure, we are going to use the sp underscore execute external script. And this is a very crucial sp. And for this sp, and this sp is always used to execute the external script. As I already tell this. And this, if you remember that this sp takes the language as a parameter. Here we are going to use the Python language, Python script, and here is our script and this is our whole script basically. This is a Python script. Up to this, we are supplying this Python code as a parameter to execute this sp execute external script, and we are supplying some input data. This is our input data. So what we are trying, we will develop the model, and we are supplying the sample data. Sample data is all, or sample data or training data is always important for any machine learning. So, and we are naming this input data as a rental train data, and as an output from this sp, we are expecting to have a model, and we are naming it train model, and we are expecting the train model as an output parameter. So let's explain this Python code. First of all, we are inputting the sklearn linear model as a linear regression. This and as I already told that we use a linear regression model. So this is an instance of linear regression. And we are also importing the pickle. I'm telling pickle is used for serialize the model, and we'll since we'll have this model and store it in the database, so we must need to serialize this our model to store it in the database, so that we can later start we can use from the data we can retrieve and use. So we are taking in data frame, and remember that we are supplying this data. If I can run this is an SQL query basically. So basically we are providing this data, the data of year 2013 and 14 data as a training data set. And this data we named as rental train data. So we are assigning this rental train data in a data frame, and we are getting all the columns in column names. There is a target. And now we are what we are predicting that we will predict the rental count. So that means in a particular day, we'll just try to predict how many rental might be happen. So so this is this prediction, or what we want to predict is our target data. So we are just taking an linear regression model, and we are fitting here. We are what we are supplying the all the columns. All the columns means the month, day, weekday, snow, and holiday, as a, and also the rental count and year. In these parameters, and our in this parameter the df target is the our total rental count, and we will just predict our rental count. So and this linear model will fit, and it will give a model, and this from this as I mentioned earlier, the pickle is used to serialize their model. So using the pickles dumps method, we are serializing our model, and we'll put this assign this model into our train model. And this is, and from this script we are expecting that train model as an output. So if we run it, what will happen? So our is completed, and we already get this model. So now we'll what we'll do, we'll save this model. We got this model, and now we'll save this model. See, we are just declaring the model and inserting the model here. It will take a couple of moments basically, because we are now training the model and developing it. So it will take a couple of moments. Just wait a bit. So our model creation is done, and our model is stored in rental 5 models. So our so far we have just create our models and stored it in our table. So now what we'll done that we'll just make the prediction. That is, if you remember one thing, that from whenever our application will call this call for any more prediction uh, prediction, then this SQL will be called. And if let me explain about this stored procedure. What we are doing here, let's say we are supplying the input data. If you see in our training data set was for we use the where clause, and there's 3 years data. So we use 2013 and 2014 data as a training data set. And now we'll put our prediction on the based on the 2015 data set. So we'll just let me check which data we are providing. Yes, we are providing only the 2015 data. And we'll just verify how it works. Okay. And again, we are naming this model as rental stored data, and we are giving the pi model. And from the we are expecting that from this Python script, we are expecting data from in this format: rental count prediction, actual rental value, then month, day, weekday, snow, holiday, etc. And let me explain it a little bit. So first thing first, we are just selecting the saved model. We already saved our develop our model and saved in the database, and we are selecting this model into this variable and executing the external script for running this code. And this is an what this code used. This is if you can see that we are just loading the rental model. We are loading the model and deserialize using the pickle. And if you remember that we used earlier, we used the pickle for serializing, and now we are deserializing the model and load the model. And we are taking the rental stored data. That means this data in our data frame DF. We are getting all the columns in our column list, and we'll predict in the rental count. So our count will be rental count. So here is the linear regression. You see that we are just predicting, and based on the columns, and print our predictions. We are using the linear squared error. So for comparing our error, and here is our prediction data set. And finally, our output data set is we are using the Panda package of Python for developing this data. Okay, if we run, so we are just developing an stored procedure which we will use for predicting. So we have created. Now, once so our model is created, and from this from this model we can we write an SP which will predict data based on this model. Now we are going to create a table. Basically, we will store that our predictional value in this table. So we have create that table, So now what we are going to do, we are just using that start procedure to predict our value. We are running it and it will take some. And at the same time, it will just insert this predicting value in our table. It will take a couple of moments. Okay, you see the values written by our Python script, which is basically saved in our table. And now we are checking it from our table. So let me explain it. So what we did basically, I am just reviewing it. We develop a model, and then we develop an state procedure for prediction purpose, and we run and the state procedure and predict some values and save those values in a table. And now we are checking our predicted value. And here is the values basically, and this is the our prediction using our models, and this is actual this is our prediction, this is actual value, and obviously this is our input value, that is month, day, weekday, snow, is there in snow, holiday, or is it a holiday or not, and finally year. So you see that our prediction is 41, total rental count will be 41 on February, month 2 is February. On 11th of February 2015, our prediction is total, there will be total 41 rental, and actual rental was 42. And for the, and you see, all these, our prediction is almost accurate. So we are, I am just going to close my, that's up to our demo basically. Now we are going to back to our presentation. Right. Okay. Can you share my see my presentation?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, okay.
It's showing demo time.
Okay. 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 It's demo time. So we have done our demo part. Now there's some monitoring. And this is basically for the DBA part. So whenever any user runs the external script like Python or R script, then the DBA need to monitor and govern how the resources are utilized in the SQL Server and what's going on behind. So this is for the DBA. So we can what we can do, we can monitor the for external scripts. There are some couple of custom reports which are based on the SQL Server Management Studio and based on the some external events. And what can we do? This can be done. We can monitor the execution of external scripts to write like Python or R. Resources, how much resources utilized, finding out any problems, and performance of the email services. And sample reports will be like this. This is an active sessions report, and it shows what sessions are active currently, which database is used like this, and there will be some execution statistics, how many execution is there, then statistics for run times, and there are some resource, how much memory is consumed, how much setting CPU utilization, etc. So let's again I'm going to my VM for showing you this report. Well, let me clear my data, our prediction, and just drop and dictate my table, and I'm running this so that we can now we'll see our performance. Give me a moment, please. Okay, and if we quickly run this, rerun this, there was 61 number of execution of 61. Let's say it will increase. It's loading. You see it's increased. And if we again run this script, and now what we're going to do, we have other exit. We'll just check this report, active sessions now. So that before that, we are just again going to execute this script. And if we reload this report, oops, first. Let me okay. This will happen. This will be loaded whenever this script is running. So I can't make this first, or can't grab this report, but it will be like this. And that means if you see that session ID, then which database, and what is the login, total elapsed time, how many reads, number of reads, number of logical reads, writes, etc. So next is our resource governor. So this is also a DBA part basically. So whenever we all know that machine learning is very much a resource hungry, and CPU is highly used. CPU memory all are highly utilized for running a machine learning. And you already see that for running some small script, it takes couple of moments to complete the script basically.
Sorry.
So
yeah, there is
yeah, hello.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
8 minutes remaining. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm almost at the end of my session.
Sure.
So this is for my last slide. So from this DBA can govern, check and fine tuning the resources and align the resources accordingly. Usually 20% of total host memory and local memory and CPU utilized for executing the external script. But if you need anything beyond is required, then the DBA can enable the resource governor and fine-tuning the resource and create new resource pool and align this resource pool with this with this group, and then they can do this. So this way they can align the resources. So this is my last slide basically. Security and is another concern. So ML services manage the security in three ways. First, it reduces the surface area and isolation. So, R and Python scripts are executed outside of core SQL Server processes. So, and external script is explicitly need to enable to run the scripts. And then script execution requires explicit permission every time a non admin user is running an execute an external script. The execute any external script need to be enabled, and obviously the database and data tables the SQL login has the access. Only he can only use those data and run. He can only use these data and tables for running this script. And finally, R and Python has the low privilege, and all are running in app containers with strict app containers separately. So one crashing of one app containers don't affect the others. And finally, there is Windows firewall rules to block the outbound traffic. So any R or Python code cannot take this data away from the SQL Server. So that's about all about my session, and now it's question and answer time. Is there any question?
Hi guys, if you have any questions, you can ask. You can put in the chat window. No, I think there is as of now no questions here.
Okay, I'm available. So if any question arises, just let me know. I will try to answer.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks everyone
Right.
for joining my session.
Yeah. Okay. Hi guys. Please help to provide feedback for the session. All the feedbacks means there will be lucky draw for that at the end of the webinar. So please help to provide us feedback.